Hey everyone, and welcome to this special designers discussion. We have with us here Chris Doyle and Tim Wozzinski to dig into the excitement that is surrounding the Kickstarter for the Crypt of the Devil Lich conversion, both for the fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons and for DCC. Our conversation here tonight, of course, will be sort of surrounding more so the 5e side of things, since we have both our lead designer for the 5e conversion and lead editor. So just to kind of introduce who the heck am I? My name is Alex Kurowski. I am going to be playing the role of host and interviewer here tonight. I run a Twitch channel called 20 Sides to Every Story, and over on our channel, we play a variety of games, mostly D&D 5th edition, although occasionally we do dabble into DCC RPG and some other different types of systems. And if you're ever watching our channel on a Friday night, there's a good chance that you're seeing us play one of the original adventures Reincarnated, which is a series that we do for the people that support our channel. And right now we're plugging along through the Lost City. So if you are ever looking to get into such a game, come and check us out over on twitch.tv/20 sides every story, and you could play that OAR or one of the future OARs that I'm sure are soon to come. But I prepared a number of questions that I'm going to pose here, but you could make my job really easy and pose your own questions out there in the Twitch chat. So throughout the program here, we'll be checking in on the Twitch chat just to see if you've got questions that you would like to pose to our two guests here tonight. I'm sure we're going to have a chance to have them both introduce themselves, but as I understand it, Chris, you've got some exciting news related to the stretch goals for the Kickstarter.
I do. Thanks a lot, Alex. First of all, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to kind of be our host and interviewer. When we were talking about different types of shows to do, we were like, hey, it'd be kind of cool if we could find somebody to interview us instead of have us talk about this project. And, so I know Alex. Alex is one of Goodman Games' freelance writers. He survived the open call funnel, as we like to call it, earlier this year. And I knew he had a show, so I reached out to Alex, and he was kind enough to give up some of his time. And so thank you for that, Alex. And thank you, Tim, for being my assistant here tonight to talk about everything about this project. But yes, as most of you, if you've been following along the Kickstarter, know, we have smashed through all of our stretch goals, and we've been working very hard this last week to get some new ones. And we're going to reveal those tonight. Now, if you don't happen to be watching tonight, they're going to be up on the Kickstarter shortly. They might even be up on the Kickstarter very soon. But so here we go. Here are the updated stretch goals. So at $60,000, which we've already achieved. So one more stretch goal already taken down. We will create 6 more pre-generated characters. So that's a whole nother party that Clicky of the Devil Lich can TPK. So at $70,000 if we hit that level, and we're going to, because we're well on our way to that already, all print backers are going to get stickers that say I got wasted by the Devil Lich, and those stickers are going to come in convenient packs of 6, just exactly what you need for 1 TPK. So we're going to call that the TPK set. So everybody's going to get one set of stickers for that. So at 80,000, we are going to give you 6 more pre-generated characters, because you're going to want extra characters to go through as the Devil Lich kills them off, as the dungeon kills them off. You probably won't even get to the Devil Lich. Then at 90,000, we are very, very excited to announce this one. The next 2, actually. We are going to print a separate player handout folio. So this is going to be separate from the print book. It's going to be a separate sheet of handouts that you can just give right to your players at the table. It's going to be basically, it's not going to be bound in the book. The handouts will probably also be in the book too, but they'll be ready for distribution to the players. Now, we have a couple of other things in mind on ways that we can enhance those. Possibly maybe make them, some of them color, maybe all of them color. But we're going to reveal that as we get closer to that one. At $100,000, if we can hit that number, which would be amazing, I am extremely excited to announce that we are going to add an entire 4th level to the Crypt of the Devil Lich. And this is kind of cool. We're going to do this just like we did it back in 2004. We're going to reach out to a bunch of designers and have them each design one encounter. And then they're going to send them all to me, and then I'm going to put them together and make it. It's going to kind of be like an optional level, but it'll be included in the book. So it'll probably be 6 to 8 additional encounters, a whole nother 25% of TPK goodness of encounters that are just in that same theme of Tome of Horrors / Crypt of the Devil Lich. So very excited about that. Now, at 120,000, we hear all you DCC fans out there, so we wanted to give you guys something special just for you guys to enjoy. And that's going to be, we're going to make the Devil Lich a patron and design her up as a patron and give 3 spells for her. And we can talk more about that in our next show, which is going to focus just on the DCC conversion. At 125K, we are going to design a slipcase with brand new art, which will be automatically added to all hardcover pledges, regardless of the rule set or regardless of what type that you're going to get. This will be a Kickstarter exclusive. It will not be available in retail stores, and it will be all brand new artwork. And then if, and I think we can do this, if we can hit 150,000, we will upgrade the slipcase to feature foil printing and lining. So that'll be pretty spectacular. Now, Alex, before I turn things back over to you, one of the other big things that people really wanted as a stretch goal was some VTC support for this product. It's coming. I can tell you guys, it's coming. We are working very hard on a map and a token pack with Fantasy Grounds. So it is coming. It's probably going to be available as an add-on at some point. More information will be coming very soon on that. So we did not forget about it. We thought about making it a stretch goal, but then we're just like, so many people are asking for it. And I'll be honest with you, we want it too. That we just decided we're just gonna put it in there. So information on the VTT support will be coming shortly, but it's definitely happening. So that's what I got. So everybody, we've got more stretch goals. Now let's try and blow through them all.
Very cool. That's quite the list of stretch goals for us to aspire to, so that we make sure we hit all of that and get all those goodies. I saw in the chat there's, like you said, there's definitely some interest on the DCC side of things here, and we're going to be able to have an opportunity to have that side of the conversation at a later date on March 20th. So come check out the Goodman Games official channel here. We're going to have, I think we've got one name confirmed. Bob Brinkman will be here to talk about that side of things, but who knows, there might be some other guests that will be joining us to share all the wonderful things that are happening on the DCC side of this conversion. So make sure to come back and check that out. So I guess before we launch into our questions and chat, please do, if you've got questions that you want answers to, please do hit up the Twitch chat there so we can get those asked. But maybe before we start digging into our conversation here, we'll have the two of you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your background and your work on this module. So let's start first with Chris.
So hello, everybody. Hopefully most of you guys recognize me from some other Twitch shows on Goodman Games official Twitch channel. My name is Chris Doyle. I am the director of 5e development and design for Goodman Games. I actually joined Goodman Games full-time this past August. And I'm basically heading up all of the exciting 5e products that we have in the pipeline. And there's quite a few. Most of you have heard about Dungeon Denizens, the monster book that we're working on. But the first one that that I'm going to be working on, that I've been working on, is Crypt of the Devil Lich. So we're getting them; they're coming out in order. I've been freelancing for nearly 30 years in various companies in the role-playing industry. And prior to that, up until August, I was a lake manager. So I'm an aquatic biologist, and I used to work on lakes. So, and I still do that on the side a little bit, but all I do now is work on 5e design for Goodman Games. So.
And Tim.
Hey everybody, Tim Wozzinski. I am the line editor for the original Adventures Reincarnated line, which I always have behind me on these things. All 6 of them, the 6th one, Temple of Elemental Evil, should be coming out pretty soon. And I also did some editing work on our 5th edition fantasy line, maybe about half of those. I've been with Goodman for coming up on 7 years now already. And I've also done a little bit of work on the alphabet books, the Cthulhu alphabet, and the latest version of the Dungeon alphabet. Been playing D&D since probably 1981 or something like that. Tried to stay current as best as possible with all the various editions over the years. And I've been working very closely with Chris and the other 5th edition writers on a lot of cool stuff now, especially this new one, the Crypt of the Devil Lich, which is, boy, Chris, have we done another product that caters to both DCC and D&D? I'm not sure.
We have not. I believe this is our first crossover. And based how popular it is, I think you're going to probably see some more crossovers in the future.
Well, very cool.
And Alex, hey, yeah. Thanks. I don't have any 20 sides to every story swag yet, but I have my 20-sided die shirt for you. So that's as close
absolutely
as now. So we got to get on that.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. Well, let's dig into this module here, or at least the original. I got the original here, and so maybe help us understand the story of this module. Going back 2004, this was the tournament module at Gen Con. I believe it was the second year that Gen Con was in Indianapolis, and Goodman Games definitely made an impression and created something that is sort of a legacy in these tournament modules. So, Chris, I imagine that this question kind of goes to you, as you were the lead designer of this project. And if what I'm reading on the internet is true, the idea for this module started where all good ideas begin, in a bar. So yes. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the story of how this module in this tournament module came to be, and what is it like for you to come back to a project that you had worked on in the past and bring it back to life and bring it before a whole new audience?
So so let's see, back in late 2003 is when I got my introduction to Goodman Games. I met Joseph Goodman at Origins that year, which was in June. It was about a month after my son was born, and I had just given notice at my previous job, so I was going to be a stay-at-home dad for the unforeseeable future. And I was like, I was already established in doing freelance. I was looking for other freelance gigs, and I hooked up with Joe. I handed him a piece of paper with some of my experience on it. Never thought I'd ever hear from him again. He emailed me, and he was he was okay with my writing experience, but what he really liked on my resume at the time was all of the experience that I had with the Role Playing Gamers Association, the RPGA. I'd run tournaments, I'd written tournament adventures before. Joe, back in his mind, this is back when the DCC line was on number 2. He had DCC number 1, Idols of the Rat King, and DCC number 2. That was his 2 products he had out. And he wanted a tournament. And so I was visiting my parents over Thanksgiving down in Florida, and he was living outside of Atlanta at the time. He drove 3 hours south. I drove 3 hours north. We met at an Irish bar. We sat down, we played a prototype of a card game that he went on to publish. And he pitched to me the idea of running a Tome of Horrors style tournament at Gen Con in 2004, and he said he had no idea how to do it, and he's like, and so I explained to him how tournaments work, and he said, can you do it? And he goes, and here's my idea. My idea is we want this to be the toughest dungeon ever. We want to kill everybody, which we did not succeed on because it was really hard to kill characters in 3rd edition. Also hard to kill them in 5th edition. And he said, I'm going to reach out to all the designers I know. We're going to get 1 or 2 encounters from every designer. And he's like, they're going to send them all to you and you're going to build a dungeon. And it's like, it's going to be the best of the best. And we're going to get really great encounters in the style of Tome of Horrors. And he was adamant about he wanted a Devil Lich. And I was like, oh, I didn't like the idea of a Devil Lich. But he's like, it's got to be a Devil Lich. And I'm like, think of it could be either the tomb of the Devil Lich or the lair of the Lich or whatever, but it's like, had to be a Devil Lich. So basically I had my marching orders were Devil Lich, Tome of Horrors, like 3-round tournament. And then the rest was a blank slate. And then it all started from there. And one of the coolest parts of the story was when I got all the encounters sent to me, I got to lay all the maps out on the floor of my basement. And then I actually got to build the 3 levels of the tomb. And I just basically put this one here and I moved this one over there and I moved that one there. And then I had to make some hallways and I had to do some other things. But that's why when you're going through the module, it might seem like the encounters are kind of not really the same feel or style. And that's because we had, I think, 10 different authors working on all the different encounters.
Very cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about this art. Flipping through this book, the original definitely gives me that feel of looking through a tournament module, the glossy pages, the handouts, very much in that kind of feel of Tomb of Horrors or Expedition of the Barrier Peaks. And I'm sure with the 5th edition conversion, you're hoping to bring some new art maybe into the mix and give some new life to some of these images. Can you talk a little bit about what we can expect in regards to the interior art and the handouts that will come with this?
So yeah, the artwork, first of all, we're pleased to announce that the artwork will be all brand new. Every single piece will be brand new. We're having it all recommissioned. There's some great, we might actually include some of the old artwork, or maybe we'll put the old artwork at the back or something. So we're not going to take artwork away from the original, but we're going to add all new artwork to it. And that's probably going to be somewhere around the area of 35 to 40 different pieces of art in the interior. Now, in addition to that, if people have the original module, or if you have Tome of Horrors or Expedition to the Barrier Peaks or some of the old classic TSR modules, you'll notice that those modules had player handouts, where basically it was a half-page illustration. It was like, when you open up the door, this is what you see. And apparently that was Gary Gygax did that because he wanted to keep all of the game masters on, and he wanted them to, he didn't want people to embellish certain things and give away clues, to keep it an equal playing field for all of the teams. So we had 22 of those pieces in the original Crypt of the Devil Lich, and that didn't even come out to 1 per encounter. We had some encounters had 2 or 3, but it was basically what we had on budget back in 2004, when we actually, after we did the tournament and when we published it. So now, since we've already smashed through all of our stretch goals, we now have 44 pieces, and I think actually we're going to up that to 46 handouts. So there will be at least 1 player's handout for every single encounter. So pretty much there'll be at least 1 when you open up the door, here's what you see. And then actually several encounters have a few more. So I think there's 20 some encounters, 26 encounters, I think, in the module. We're gonna have like 46 pieces of handouts that actually go to the player characters for the updated version.
That art from the back of the book, those handouts, were often like a source of inspiration for me. I've never run this module myself, the original module, but this and another, I think it's Vault of the Dragon King.
Yes,
Kings
Vault of the Dragon
is another
King.
tournament module.
Yep.
And these two books, I would mine for ideas. I didn't run them as tournament modules, or they're in their entirety, but the encounters are amazing, and really fun to kind of pick up and drop into your own games. I remember in this one, I won't spoil kind of the conceit behind it, but there's an encounter that involves kind of rainbow colored pillars that my players remarked that they had a lot of fun with. But the original module is full of all sorts of stuff like this, and you're going to be bringing that into the 5th edition experience. Tim, I'm wondering if you can sell me on Crypt of the Devil Lich and tell me what makes this module a Goodman Games experience.
It's got the logo on it, first and foremost. No, I mean, when I first became aware of Goodman Games, I actually heard about them from friends of mine who played in a tournament at Gen Con. And they were raving about how cool the adventure was and how it really felt like an old school dungeon crawl. And the big thing that I heard that they liked were the puzzles. It wasn't just the monsters or the judge who was running it, but they really thought the puzzles were cool. And I think that's a hallmark of the 5th edition fantasy line of 5e modules that we've done. And now this one too, of course. Chris and the other designers really have done a great job with memorable, challenging puzzles to go along with the monsters that will kill you. And another thing too is there's a really nice, colorful backstory about this Devil Lich character and why she is the way she is and what she's been doing. And it fits into the Goodman Games. I don't know if it's an official, it's not a product, but right. But there's a game world, the world of Aerith, that a lot of the old Dungeon Crawl Classics modules were set in. And I know the maps are out there online and people can find them and kind of put it all together. And it's just a nice, it's a complete package that fits into what's come before from Goodman Games. And also it ties into directly to one of the 5th edition fantasy modules that Chris wrote, The Pillars of Pelagia. The character and backstory of that module sort of overlaps with Crypt of the Devil Lich. But another thing too is there are cursed items. A lot of times it seems like a lot of modern modules kind of shy away from that, but that was a hallmark of old school adventuring is, you find a pile of treasure and it's all cool stuff, but one of those swords might not be what you think it is or something along those lines. I think Goodman Games adventures have been known for that, and this still holds true. So be careful as you're playing through this because everything's out to kill you in this module. And I think you'll like it. It's fun. Even if you die, you'll still have fun. I guarantee you.
Maybe that's it, right? You're gonna die, but you're gonna have fun doing it. That's
one more thing. I saw a question in the chat. Sorry, my brain's kind of divided here. I want to answer. Someone asked, "What makes it a tournament adventure?" Right, and so it's split into rounds. So at a convention, a tournament is set up so that a set number of teams of players all go through the same adventure with different judges. And they score points along the way by completing certain tasks or defeating certain modules or making it through X number of rooms. So usually what happens is just like a sports tournament or something. You start out with 8 teams in the first round, and then maybe the top 4 who score the most number of points make it to the second round. And then they play the second level of this Crypt, and they go through all new encounters. It's a brand new level. And then maybe the top 2 or 3 teams then advance to the finals. And so the big thing about tournament scoring is it's a lot of achievement-based type of activity. And you want to make sure that if you have different judges running the same adventure for different people, that it's all, everyone kind of gets the same experience presented to them. Now, of course, the players are going to act differently in each of the different teams and groups that are playing. But like what Chris and you, Alex, what you were talking about earlier with the handouts, is you want to make sure that people all see the rooms the same way initially. And then it's up to them to figure out how they want to deal with the room and find the things and kill the bad guys and get the most amount of points they can get. And so then as far as what makes this Goodman is if you make it through, you'll be sweating. And you will have a huge sense of accomplishment, and you will be very proud of yourself if you make it through this. And I think that is a hallmark of a good Goodman Games adventure.
Sticking with that, the tournament module kind of concept, it's a very different experience. I haven't experienced altogether that many myself, but I don't know, Chris, maybe you could speak to this, but from the design perspective, especially as you kind of mentioned, you had so many contributors working on this original, and if you hit that stretch goal, we're going to bring them back together again to add a few pieces into the mix. How do you deal with that as on the design side of things to ensure that you're writing encounters that are going to be, you try to control for that DM kind of variable, right? That everyone is sort of getting the same experience, so that there's a certain degree of, I don't know, quality control there for the purposes of the tournament.
That's a great question. So part of that was my responsibility as the overall project leader, if you will, organizer. I actually developed the scoring system for all of the encounters. So that's not one thing. I had the original designers would give suggestions on, oh yeah, you should get X number of points for this, X number of points for that. But I actually was the one that devised that, and then I tweaked some of the encounters to add some parts on it too, because again, like Tim said, a lot of it is achievement based. There's objectives, and you could complete the you can kill the dragon and complete the objective, but you might also be able to save some resources and time by tricking the dragon and getting past it, and you might actually get more points for the second, or you might just gain some time, because that was another component of the tournament. Time, the further you got into the dungeon, the more points you got. So if you got through 6 encounters, you might have gotten 500 points, but if you got through 7 encounters, you might have gotten 750 points as your base. So it definitely is different than campaign play, it's tough. We're trying to do a little bit of both here. We're trying to have this be a tournament module, but it also be playable in your home campaign. That's a little tricky. I would say, if I had to say it was one versus the other, it's probably a tournament module first and it's a campaign module second. I think it just takes a little bit more effort on the game master's side to make it that campaign and kind of integrate that smoother. But it's definitely a different mindset, and I think the players need to know, just like the original Tome of Horrors, they need to know what they're getting into. And if you've got a group of players that want to be tested on their rules knowledge, their tactics, their teamwork is so important. I mean, they have to be all working together, sharing their resources and doing what makes sense. Like if one character is really good at, well, here's a great example. So the pre-generated characters, there's two rogues. One rogue is really good at spotting things. Okay. The other rogue is a gnome with terrible wisdom and doesn't realize something until it's literally on top of them. So, the one rogue is good at finding the traps. The other rogue is good at disarming the traps, disabling the traps. So they work together as a team. Now, if one goes down, they could, the other can step in, but you have to work together like that. And that's part of the design. Knowing the strengths and weaknesses of the pre-gens is important. I would say my group, when I ran them through it, it took them a session or two before they kind of got to the point where they kind of understood their abilities, their strengths, their weaknesses, and then they kind of started working together as a cohesive team. So it's best really to let your players know ahead of time what they're getting into, and they should really be, very few people ever use 15th level characters in a module. This should be we're going to do this for a couple of sessions and we're going to see how it works and everything, and it should be a fun time. But they should understand that going in. They should understand that the dungeon's trying to kill them, Glikia is trying to kill them, and the game master is going to be impartial, but at the end of the day, he's trying to go for the TPK also. So a little bit of different mindset there.
Hey, Chris, I would say that it is good as a campaign module when the GM wants to end the campaign, when they're fed up with their players, and we're out of here. Peace out, mic drop, you're all dead.
and I've heard people viewing Tome of Horrors that same way, where they use Tome of Horrors as that ultimate capper to a 2-year campaign when all of their characters are really high level, and they're like, okay, this is the final obstacle. If you guys get past this, you guys all ascend to demigods and whatnot and everything. So yeah, certainly when you're talking 15th level, I mean, I don't think there's so few people actually play D&D over 10th level, I would say. And you can even see that most of the Wizards of the Coast and other modules that are published out there, they usually get to about 10th level or so, and then they stop. And there's a reason for that. Most people get to that 10th level, and then they're like, yep, I'm done with that. This is different. This is for, wow, I've never played a 15th level monk before. Let me give this a shot. And we give you those tools to do that, and you give you just enough rope to hang yourself on it.
So I think we've got a few OAR fans out here in the chat, just based on a few comments that we're seeing come through. I'm a big fan of the OAR series, and one of the great things about those books is all the work that you put into it to create something extra, a little extra content, some more dungeons, whatever, what have you. Something that really make it feel like more of a campaign. We're kind of talking here that sometimes maybe this is a capstone to a campaign, but maybe it's the start of something too. So maybe can you talk a little bit about, we made the announcement at the top of the show about the stretch goals. What any hints, any spoilers on what some of that new content might look like? Will it be scored right along with everything else? The rest of the entirety of the tournament module?
Yeah, so we were thinking long and hard about that, and at the end of the day, we were first thinking that maybe we would have encounters and just put them all in the back in an appendix, like a random assortment of 10 new encounters, and the game master could drop them in wherever he wanted to. And again, that would probably be more for campaign play, or replace, like, I really don't like this encounter, but this encounter is cool. But then we were like, no, that just felt like we were replacing some of the stuff from the original. So we came up with the idea of an entirely new level. And then we'll just slide that in probably in between levels 1 and 2, I would say. So it'll probably be like level 1A, I guess it would be called. And we'll just set it up. Whereas if the game master wants to use it, wants that whole extra level, we'll just present it as, here's, this area goes to this area instead of that area, and then tie them in that way. I'm looking at 6 to 8 different encounters. I've just started reaching out to some of the authors. I'd really like to have my son design one of them. My son was 6 months old when I wrote the first Crypt of the Devil Lich. He's now 17 and getting ready to go to college. And he actually probably plays more 5e than I play, believe it or not, on a weekly basis. So he's actually designed his own encounters and all that. So I would really like to work with him to actually create a room. He's got lots of cool ideas. I could probably take some of those raw ideas and refine them and make a really cool encounter. He's actually played through the entire 5th edition version of Crypt of the Devil Lich, and got TPK'd at the final encounter. Remember what I said about teamwork, people? Teamwork, and tactics. They didn't have it. But it was fun.
Your own child, Chris? Your own child.
My own child. Yeah, I know. And my wife, too. Anyway, and I've got some ideas too. I'm sure other people are gonna have a lot of cool ideas on some of the other designers they would like to see. But we will be, once we start getting closer to 100K, we'll start revealing who some of those guest authors are going to be.
So digging into like the conversion side of things here, there's a lot of things that are similar about 3rd edition and 5th edition, but I think when it comes down to like spells, changes to how spells work. Sometimes when I'm sitting down to play a 5th edition game and somebody casts a spell, I'm still thinking back to how was it in a previous edition. So when you go back to look at this module and the way that you have to convert magic items and spells, and what are some of the challenges that you've been confronted with taking some of that stuff from back in the 3rd edition rules, but realizing that maybe there was some wild change that happened, or just the rules played out a little bit different for the complexity of the puzzle that was set in the encounter that you're looking at?
Tim, do you want to take that one? Start with it.
Yeah, sure. Initially it's logistics too. We just want to make sure that it really hasn't been converted, somewhere else in one of, maybe not the core books, but so we stay current with all the official books that have come out, so we can reference those and see if something pops up, later that's not in one of the core books. And then we also, we maintain it's getting pretty lengthy now, a pretty big spreadsheet of all the stuff that we've converted, all the items, the spells, the monsters and everything. And we make sure that if this module calls for a spell that we need to convert, that we didn't actually do it already, because that, we don't want to redo things and reinvent the wheel. But play testing is a big part of it, because there could be some little thing where you read the old version of the spell and you immediately get an idea for how the 5th edition is going to work, and you write it up, but you have to test it to make sure that the outcome is roughly the same, so you don't overpower or underpower something. I mean, you really need to be really aware of what's going to happen. And as every game master knows, until it's seen in play, you're not really sure how it's going to work. It looks one way on paper and then another way in the game. As far as there are a few sentient weapons in this module, and the way sentient weapons have been handled over the years, the various editions, it's changed a little bit. So what we try to do is, Chris is the one doing the conversions, right? But then what I help with is to make sure that we're following the proper format and the flow of, and the look and feel of how sentient weapons are supposed to be in 5th edition. Because although we definitely put our own Goodman flair on them, we do want to make sure that they still feel like an old school D&D item. So it's a little bit of an art and a little bit of a science to get that stuff to marry up properly. And one thing we have to keep in mind too is just kind of in general, 5th edition is a little more verbose than prior editions. Like in the old days, you'd find a magic sword and it would detect gems within 60 feet, and that was all it said. I mean, you had to figure out exactly what that meant. But now that sort of thing, all the powers, the major powers, the minor powers, exactly how a sentient weapon may try to take over its wielder, all that stuff is explained in a high level of detail. And so we pay a lot of attention to that to make sure we are presenting things in the proper way to make them usable, and just to make sure we give a clear idea to both the GM and the player on how this thing's supposed to work.
Yeah, I'll add that there was definitely some challenges going from 3.5 edition to 5th edition. So if for folks who've played 3.5 edition, two very big things I would say that those systems were really known for. When I say systems, I really mean 3rd edition and 3.5, was the fact that multi-classing player characters was a thing. Like, it was like an advantage to multi-class. 5th edition, you can do it. It's really, you can do it if you're trying to go for something particular, but it's not really something where you get a lot of benefits out of it. 3 of our 6 pre-generated characters were multi-classed, and again, that's because trying to take advantage of some of the 3rd edition rules. Also, one of the things back in 3rd edition, like the main reason why the cleric was not a 15th level cleric and was a 12th level cleric and a 3rd level fighter, was a 15th level cleric in 3rd edition actually had a chance to turn the Devil Lich. And I was like, that's not a cool way for the end of the module. so that was my solution to and it was a slight chance. I think you needed to roll like an 18 or higher, or 19 or higher on a die 20, but I'm like, I still didn't want that happening. I didn't want to get to that final encounter and just turn undead and then the encounter be over. So that was the reasoning for that. So we did keep them multi-class in 5th edition, but they probably aren't as optimized, but that's okay, because these characters are not optimized in the first place. And that's part of the charm of the tournament module. We could have really given optimized characters, but we wanted to challenge the players. Trust me, we heard a lot of grief back in 2004 on how these characters were not optimized, and people are pretty passionate about that. The other thing it's very different between the two systems is back in 3rd edition and 3.5. Monsters could have class levels. So you could have an 11th level monk vampire, and there were rules on how to create that. Well, 5th edition, you can sort of do that, but not really. So that specific, you can just say it's a monk vampire. And then you have to kind of build it up around that. You know, start with your vampire, and basically we would start with the vampire as the base, and then we would add what we would say is the equivalent to the 11th level monk abilities, but their features and traits, and we might not give it key points because that's complicated to keep track of, but we might give it can use them a couple times a day. So it's still got that 5th edition feel to it. But it's still very true to the original, and there was quite a few NPCs that had that treatment to them, so it was a little bit of a challenge. Some of the stat boxes in this module are crazy huge. Kalikia herself is just under 1,000 words long, and she's like 3 pages long. She got a lot going on for a boss encounter. So that's probably 2 of the big things that jump out to me as far as the differences between the systems and actually doing the conversion. But a lot of times we tried. Oh, I know what this was a big deal. And this really goes back to the tournament play. So in 3rd edition and 3.5, when we created the tournament characters, we told you what spells you memorized for the day. So it was really easy to give the wizard 1 fly spell and 1 telekinesis. And those 2 spells can wreck encounters. I mean, DMs know this. They can wreck encounters. And they can specifically avoid almost entire encounters in the dungeon. Well, in 5th edition, it's a spell slot system. So if you can cast telekinesis, you can cast it any number of times for your 5th level slot, and you can upcast it to 7th level or 8th level as well. Same with fly. You can actually make more people fly easier. So that was a challenge. So we actually had to redesign some of the encounters to basically account for that, because I really didn't want to take some of those spells away from the spellcaster. I thought about it, but at the end of the day, I kind of wanted that option there, because in my opinion, a really good game master can turn that around. You get yourself, like I always love to say this, spider climb and fly. Players might think those are encounter busting abilities, and they are, but they could also get you into a lot of trouble. You get a flying rogue, away from the rest of the party, and then something goes down, and the rogue is like, wait, I'm not used to being the pincushion out in the middle here. What happened to the big fighter? The big fighter is 60 feet behind us. So we have a little bit of that going on in this module. So I did have to tweak some things specifically to try and give a little bit of a counter for some of those.
So we just got a question in from the chat. And I believe, so the question is, ever consider a sequel follow-up module? Obviously not a continuation, but a module of equal stature. I believe, Chris, did you do a module that essentially, I think Tim, you referenced it earlier, one that was essentially like a prequel to Crypt of the Devil Lich?
Yeah, so there was a prequel that we did. I had, right after we did Crypt of the Devil Lich, I had kind of sketched out an adventure that I always wanted to do, actually for Free RPG Day, ironically, that basically dealt with the story of how Kalikia got one of the artifacts that she used to actually conquer the surface world. And it was just a fun backstory thing. And we got, I got an opportunity to, when we were starting the 5th edition line for Goodman Games back in 2014, I think it was, there was cover art that basically had a tiefling on the cover of a book. And basically Joe said, here, I've got this awesome cover art, write a module around it, which is a fun way to do things. And I looked at her and I thought, wow, it's like, that almost looks like Kalikia before she's a Devil Lich. I'm like, that's kind of cool. And we went back to the artist and we said, hey, is there any way we could just tweak this up a little bit and make her, half drow and add some other embellishes in that. And the artist was cool with doing that. So we did that. And then I wrote a pre-story that happened like hundreds of years before the Crypt of the Devil Lich. And again, you don't need to have any knowledge of it, but that's FEF 3, the Pillars of Pelagia. And it's just a little bit fun backstory. There's probably a little bit more backstory in there than there probably should be, but that's just because there's kind of, it has to do with this story on how she got this artifact. And it was kind of like, the whole story of how she kind of got her start. And she does actually she can make a guest appearance at the end of the module, before she's a lich. So she's just a tiefling sorcerer at that point, conjurer, I believe. So yeah, it was kind of cool. I have often thought about a sequel. And I probably even have some notes probably written down somewhere on a couple of ideas here and there. Actually, I know I do. We talked about it actually quite a bit, and then I think fourth edition came along. So yeah, that's something that we could possibly look into. But there's a story in there, and it is tied in with the whole Goodman Games mythos with the known world there, Aerith, that Tim mentioned. So that could be a possibility. We'll have to see.
Well, let's talk a little bit about monsters and the monsters that we might see in the conversion. That's one thing I was, when you're talking about differences between third edition and fifth edition, that's always like a very notable change. In third edition, you might have monster stat blocks that had player character classes. You might have your orc that has 5 levels of fighter or whatnot. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about that process, like, how do you choose maybe the iconic ability from the class to attach the stat block in lieu of having the full, being able to give it a true character class, and other challenges that you had with this conversion in trying to bring some of these original monster concepts from the original and bring them into the present system.
Well, I'll let Tim talk about some of the nitty-gritty stuff, but the one thing that I will tell everybody is in the entire module, there are no standard monsters from the monster manual. Everything is unique. Yeah, it's actually not totally true. I believe there's one that actually is not. So that was the first thing that, this module, that was one of our goals in the original design, was to create things that characters were no idea what they were. And that's part of the excitement, not knowing that you're fighting, for example, a flesh golem, because it doesn't look like a flesh golem, but it is a flesh golem, or it's got a lot of, that's its base or whatever. So that's the first thing, that all the monsters are like brand new. They all have full write-ups of fifth edition stats. Same with the DCC version. We've actually had to create, and Bob will get into that much more. He had to create entire monsters that are some of them are kind of classic monsters in D&D, just for the DCC version. So that should be fascinating. So players really should not know what to expect. You're not running into orcs here. You're not running into ogres. You're running into some weird stuff. And when I say weird, I say weird. There's some really, really strange things in here. So that can kill you. Tim, do you want to talk a little bit about, how we accomplished the fifth edition mechanics part?
Sure. Yeah. Well, when I get the manuscripts from Chris, the first thing I do is I read them, and then I wonder how sick and twisted he truly is to come up with some of this stuff. But he obviously he does a great job with pulling out the really important pieces from the 3.5 version and making sure they're still there for the 5th edition version. And then again, it's a lot of number crunching again to make sure the challenge ratings are correct and things just line up the way they should, so that it can adequately challenge 15th level characters, which are nothing to sneeze at, especially in 5th edition. I don't want to give away anything. It's hard to talk with too many specifics, but we do a lot of comparison to what's in the core books and make sure that things line up properly. I don't know. It sounds like I'm being evasive, but I really don't want to spoil anything. If someone's coming into this, blind, and I want them to read this and really enjoy it. But let me just say that it's not done lightly, but it's not something we just buzz through and slap a couple of these and a couple of those together and call it a monster. It's a process. It takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it. Again, with the play testing, I don't know. It's a tough one to answer without giving anything away. But
yeah, I'll just
like Chris said, I'm having trouble remembering. You say there's one monster that's like standard.
Yeah.
I think I might know what you're talking about, but even if it's the one I'm thinking of, it's still been tweaked a little bit. So there's a lot of new good stuff in here. It's not just a rehash of monsters you're familiar with.
Yeah. No, these encounters, like I said, there's only 26 encounters, I think the number is. in the entire module, but the module is probably 144 pages long. So these encounters are so complicated that they're really like 3 encounters kind of wrapped in one, most of them. Because there's a lot of things going on. There's terrain, there's traps, there's monsters, sometimes all in that where there's a puzzle, sometimes there's a puzzle just to get into the room. So they're very detailed. So even though there might not be a huge number of them, there's a lot going on. And if there's one thing that Tim and I are good at, it's converting things from previous editions. This was different going from 3rd edition to the 5th edition, but after doing 6 ore books, we kind of gotten that feel down and how to do it, and you try to keep it faithful to the original material within the mechanics of the rules, and that's what we try to pride ourselves on, is trying to we're not breaking rules. If you read Tome of Horrors, there's a lot of rule breaking going on in there in order to set the characters up to fail. But again, that's what the purpose was. That was the whole deal. This we don't do that. We don't go breaking rules just to pull one over on the characters. We try to keep it all within the 5e mechanics.
So speaking of trying to trying to find a way to create balance or make sure that you're not breaking the rules, you're talking a little bit about the pre-gens, and that's a big part of the Kickstarter stretch goals. Talk a little bit about what you have to go through in terms of thinking about creating a pre-gen for a tournament module. What are some of the challenges? Did you ever think, in going through this conversion, was there ever a temptation to maybe not have them be 15th level, but to set that number somewhere else? Tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, I thought very carefully about maybe making them 12th level or 13th level, something like that, just to kind of increase the lethality a little bit more. But at the end of the day, the final couple of encounters are really, really difficult. And you do in the tournament, you do kind of reset from level to level. So once you finish level 1 and you start level 2, you start with all of your equipment back and everything. But you're not allowed to rest in the dungeon. So there's no short rests, because short rests would you'd be at full strength going into every encounter basically. And if we were to do that, then we would have had to redesign all of the encounters to make them even more lethal. And that just would have gotten crazy. So we didn't do that specifically for that reason. So at the end of the day, we kept it at 15th level. I just really wanted to give a 15th level experience to the players. I felt like if I did 12th level, that was getting too close to that 10th level cutoff, and it just wasn't going to feel as epic. And then there was a thought, I think somebody brought up, the possibility of a sequel. If we ever did a sequel, good God, the characters probably need to be 18th or 20th level at that point. So that's kind of a daunting a thought right there, but not impossible, but a little bit daunting that we could do. So that was kind of the thought with the characters that we had. But a lot of what we were trying to do is, like I said, try and keep it faithful to the original. And in regard to the tournament, we wanted to make sure the characters had the tools, the player characters had the tools they needed. And then they also had plenty of expendable resources, because one of the tournament scoring things we had in there is if you use your expendable resources up, you actually lose points. So, if you use the charges on your staff of healing up, you're going to actually lose points every time you use that thing. So, but we wanted to make sure that they had the available options. So, to basically test, can you get through this encounter without using the staff of healing, if you get through the encounter, that's great. But maybe if you get to the encounter and not use it, you'll actually get more points. So we tried to make sure that we balance that for the characters.
That adds a fun dynamic to a tournament, because the one guy's like, I'm dying over here. And everyone's like, no, man, don't use that charge off that staff. We need the points. You just suck it up.
Yep. That's a big part of it, a real big part of it. And then the next thing they know, a character gets killed in the next room. And if they would have healed them up, you would have lost maybe 25 points. But now you just lost like 250 because he died.
Well, I see the chat is being invaded by the bots right now, but we want to we want to put out there. We just have a few minutes left. If you got any questions, please do throw them out in the chat. We'd love to get you an answer to all of your questions about the conversion to Crypt of the Devil Lich. But I guess as we're wrapping up here, Chris, Tim, anything that we didn't cover, anything we didn't talk about that you really think people should know in getting excited about this Kickstarter?
Oh, well, why don't we reveal some of the new artwork so people can see that? If Thorn wants to pull some of those up, and we can kind of show everybody what some of those pieces are going to look like. Yep. So we have a couple of pieces. There's an artwork by Stefan Pogue. That's one of the encounters. We don't want to try and, I'm not going to tell you too much about that encounter, but that's a kind of a crucial encounter near the end of one of the levels.
Yeah, don't anybody be taking screenshots of this stuff now.
That's a great shot. I love that picture. That's from the background. That's when Kalikia is taking over the Elven city centuries before the module starts. You can see all of her humanoid armies are just ransacking a city in the forest there. Yeah, there's the so I did an update on details on converting this crazy flesh golem with choker arms and spider legs. That's what that guy looks like there. You can see him lurking above some unsuspecting player characters. Of course, your characters wouldn't be unsuspecting, would they? So this is one of our pre-generated characters. This is the wizard, the fire wizard. She casts fire spells and lots of them. That's her gig. But do not underestimate flying and telekinesis, without a doubt. Brother Yarrow is our 15th level monk. I refer to Brother Yarrow as the mistake that I made 17 years ago and still haunts me to this day. I needed a 6th pre-generated character for the tournament, and I didn't have any idea. And there's a whole backstory thing that has to do with an order of monks. And I said, oh, this would be cool if I include a monk. And let me tell you, trying to kill a 3rd edition monk is nary impossible, and 5th edition is just as hard. We had in our play, I won't tell you, but anyway, there was this crazy setup where I still couldn't kill the monk in the session I ran last week. So,
well, very cool. Well,
yep.
Well, thank you both for taking the time to share all the cool stuff that's going to be in this 5th edition conversion of Crypt of the Devil Lich. I know we had people asking about the DCC side of things, and you're in luck. March 20th, stop back at the channel, and we're going to have Bob Brinkman and maybe some other guests to talk about the exciting things that are happening on the DCC side of the conversion. So I guess with that, any final thoughts, final words before we sign off here?
I'll just say thank you again to Alex for being our host. We appreciate that much. And if you guys haven't already, I don't know if the stretch goals are up on the Kickstarter page yet, but if they're not, they're going to be getting up there sometime very soon. So if you missed the beginning of the show with the stretch goal reveal, they will be up at some point this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Thanks, Chris. Thanks to the producer, Thorn, for keeping it all rolling. I think this was a lot of fun, and I learned stuff. I hope everybody else did too. This is a great project. I really think people are going to like it. It's really cool, and just the fact that there's 2 flavors of it: the 5e, which is closer to my heart, and the DCC side, which I know a lot of people are interested in. It's a big deal, and it's a lot of fun. You'll definitely like it.
Yes, shout out to Thorn for doing a great job behind the curtain again. Thank you, sir. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.